Kayla Kessler, Nukwam, Heustislas, Gail Nach Muskmach, Tawadenoch, Namcase. Good afternoon, everyone. My presentation, unfortunately, is not up on the on the screen, but that's okay. Um, my name is Ainjil Hunt. I'm Muskmach Tawadenoch from Kinkham Inlet. I'm Namcase from Alert Bay. I'm also Tlingit from Tongass, Alaska. And so it's with great pleasure that I'm here. I have a social and economic development company called Transformation, and my business partner is Carol Ann Hilton. We've been working for the past 10 years now in social and economic development. And what I was wanting to be able to discuss and talk with you about today is moving beyond protocols and MOUs. It's one of the things that we, hello. It's one of the things that we have noticed in relationship building over the past many number of years in across sectors, and we have come to realize that taking a look at protocol and MOU is something that from many First Nations we've heard that that's just the very beginning part of the relationship. The MOU in large part has been merely like a handshake, if you will. And the relationship building part really needs to be a lot stronger. And when we take a look at the culture of communication around deleting, distorting, and generalizing information, one of the things we ask is, how do you know you're understood? I know that for many corporations, I've been in a number of boardrooms, and the individuals state that they have a fantastic relationship with whatever said First Nation. And so when we start to come in and do Aboriginal corporate relationship building, not only with that corporation, organization, or government, with the First Nation itself, and we start to ask questions around the quality of that relationship, the First Nation a lot of times states that they do not have a very good relationship, because just the signing of the MOU and the protocol, it needs to go quite a bit further than that. So I think there are a lot of assumptions within that kind of communication. And one of the things that, Carol Ann and I were just in Alberta. We were just in 3 different boardrooms in Calgary and Edmonton. And that's one of the things that they were talking about, is around assumptions, around relationship building. What does that actually look like? And I know one really good example of relationship building was, I think I was at an ICAB breakfast, Industry Council for Aboriginal Business, probably about, I can't even remember how many years ago, but I thought it was pretty fantastic that the chief at the time came in with the mayor of Powell River. And they were having some difficulty with, they were wanting to expand the road, and it went over a sacred site. And so they were going back and forth through paper, back and forth from council to council. And finally one day the chief just walked into his office and said, "Come on, let's go, we're gonna go for coffee." They went for coffee, they took a ride out to exactly where that spot was to be able to see and what was gonna be happening. And through that relationship building and going for lunch and having that discussion, plans totally changed. And they were able to see on either side of what the needs were, what the actual relationship was. And that morning at the breakfast, the mayor got up and he actually spoke in their language. He introduced himself within their language on all of their papers that they have within their council chambers. There's the nation's logo or symbol on that. And I was pretty impressed. I mean, it's such a small thing, but I think it's about that respect as well. And I know that when we were just having conversations with a number of nations in Alberta, they were saying if they did a 360-degree view of what was happening within their traditional territories, there's oil and gas, there's mining, there's diamonds, there's all different, there's energy, all different kinds of industry they're being impacted by that. And what more often than not, when they talk about what is the relationship, I mean, it's pretty difficult for a lot of small nations to be able to have the capacity to really maintain that strength of relationship in terms of getting to know a number of people. But it is important, and it is something that they are wanting to be able to do. And so when we talk about components of a good relationship, levels of information and communication, often we're taking a look at, okay, chief and council, and whatever said industry thinks that that's what's the most important. And of course it is. There's chief and council, there's hereditary leaders, there's also the community members, and it is important to be able to have that relationship within the community as well. And for one very good reason, or for a couple of good reasons, and that is because the community members who, whatever the project is and proponents are coming in, then they could very well be the next chief and council. You're wanting to be able to have that communication run through not only chief and council, but to community. And that communication has to be done in a variety of different ways, so that nation members also have an understanding of what's happening and what's going on. I think it's also, could I have the time? Thank you. I think it's also something that we've really looked at is taking a look on, the duty to consult. And I know a lot of times when people are starting to build relationships within First Nations territories, a lot of times what we've been told anyways within the past even number of months is that many nations have felt that they haven't been consulted properly. And a lot of the frameworks that have been relied upon, it's really not good enough, I think. It is important, of course, to be able to have and to go by those frameworks to make sure that everything is reliable, but also on the same hand, when you're talking about that relationship building, things can really be delayed if they're not, if things aren't done in a proper way. And when we take a look at those aspects too around legislation, are there any lawyers in the room? One lawyer in the room. I like that. Right. And so it's kind of like there's two things you never want to know how it's made, right? And that's hot dogs and legislation. So those are some aspects that we have to understand both systems. There's a system, of course, within law. There's so many regulations in provincial government, federal government, and then there's also First Nations laws as well too. In terms of beyond the paper protocol, there's protocols that need to be followed and to be respectful within First Nations, and taking a look at the various dynamics around either inclusion or exclusion. A lot of times that paper relationship that we're talking about, like the MOU or the protocol, is and can be exclusionary in a lot of ways. So when we're wanting to be able to build relationship, we can ask different questions. And I think it is in large part the quality of questions that we ask is the quality of life or relationship that we can build with one another. So some of the questions are, when different projects are going into First Nations communities, the purpose also is, and I think the goal is to leave things better than when you arrived. And I know it may be difficult in different points, but when different relationships are being created and you're asking, is this the best that there is? How can I improve it? So how can you add to the relationship? And what supports are needed? Some of the best questions too, when we're like, can you think of any examples of some questions that you could be asking beyond those?
Angel, sorry, I'm deaf. Could you repeat yourself again? Ask that question.
Sure. When we're talking about building a relationship, and it's the quality of questions that we ask is the quality of relationship that we're going to be getting. So, are there other questions that you can ask? Because some of them were, this is the best that we have right now in terms of relationships. So, how can we improve that relationship when industry or organizations, governments are coming in to be able to work with nations? And the question was, are there other questions that you could ask to be able to broaden that out? Because more often than not, what happens is whatever said proponent is just going through a number of questions and ticking off boxes, right? So when we're taking a look, like the other day, we had an elder in a boardroom who was talking about, okay, when we're looking through these different processes, everyone wants to be able to put things into boxes. And she was saying, from a cultural perspective, what we put in boxes is our gifts, our power, our knowledge. It's like a box of treasures being able to be opened up. And that kind of knowledge and that ability to be able to work together with one another is something that is very important, especially now as more and more nations are coming into their own. And economic development, I mean, the Aboriginal marketplace is starting to boom. It's definitely emerging. We take a look all across the country, especially in British Columbia as well, with so many nations that are starting to enter into industry, who are being able to take a look through a number of different sectors. And I think it's pretty exciting. And once again, it goes back to that relationship, because for me, when we take a look at any type of organization that's wanting to go in, there's always seems to be a little bit of trepidation or a little bit of fear or unknowing about what people are getting into. They're like, whoa, like cultural protocol, it's something that people want to be respectful about, but not really knowing. And most definitely, even for myself and for Carol Ann, when we go into other people's territory, of course, we want to know what their protocols are. Each one is different. And I know, I know even for myself, I have to practice over and over again sometimes, like the names, because like I screw it up too. So I think those are some of the aspects that we can take a look at. So taking a look at communication gaps. So the meaning of communication is the response you get. If you're wanting to be able to put out any type of communication and you're not getting the response that you want, then do a different approach. And asking questions, once again, to be able to see how you can move relationships along, or how things can, people might want to, I would say one of the best ways to be moving relationships along is around having something to eat with that person, or to be able to, I've seen that so many times now, like what the elder was saying, okay, well, here's our relationship right here in this boardroom, and then everybody went for lunch, and that's where the real business started, right? And being able to share that with one another. And I still quite like that notion of the chief in Slam and going to the mayor's council chambers, and that's how their relationship started as well. So moving beyond the MOU and protocol, how many people in here here have either written, seen MOUs and protocols, used them? So what has your experience been? Has it been along those lines around, there's the MOU and the protocol, and then what's beyond that? Go ahead.
What does MOU stand for?
Memorandum of Understanding. Sorry. And protocols as well, like it's really about how the relationship is going to go, but it's written on paper. But what does that actually look like in real life? Go ahead.
for us, the protocol, as you said, is just the beginning of the relationship. So
Yeah.
it sets the guidelines of which we try to follow, so that if there is some kind of a dispute or a misunderstanding, we go back to the protocol and say, okay, well, no, this is what it really meant. This is
Yep.
what we said. So it's, for us, a protocol is just a guideline under which we try and operate in a mutual basis. So as you said, it's just the beginning of
Yeah.
the relationship with the manual or the how-to guide to guide us through.
Right. And so, anyone else? Exactly. And, you know, they definitely do have their value, for sure. And it's certainly been an experience over the past number of years, number of months, of being able to open those back up. So what does that really mean? What does that exchange and that the ability to be able to have great communication, to have that communication feedback loop? Yeah, what time are we at? 10:55. Okay. Are there any questions? Go ahead.
It's not that it's easy, but there's a way forward when you're, how do I say this, when there's mutual dialogue, when you're trying to get to a point. But what questions do you ask if a nation doesn't want to talk to you? Like, if they don't want to even talk to you, you're already there, and you want to have a dialogue, or you want to engage, or you want to create a protocol. How do you find out what their protocols are, and what are the right questions to ask to get them to even start that dialogue? Does that make sense?
Certainly. Yeah, it does. Okay, well, this is a lot, okay, this is going to be a funny answer, in the sense that this is precisely the reason why Caroline and I are brought in for those very things. So to be able to have that understanding of being able to go between not only the chief and council, but whoever the organization, the proponent, First Nation, whoever they are, and we're able to assist in managing that relationship. And I find quite often the perceptions on both sides are very, very different. So I think it's about bringing clarity. It's about bringing out assumptions and expectations as well. What are they? What is needed to be able to make whatever that project is move forward? You know, from there's cultural aspects, there's different things around, you know, traditional use, traditional ecological knowledge, all different aspects from cultural perspectives as well. So finding those things out, I think, is really a strong basis of starting and beginning that relationship. And like you say, even before you get to the protocol, but how are you going to maintain that relationship through time? Because of course, if you're taking a look at pipeline, the relationship might be a lot shorter compared to, say, mining. Mining is a huge, long-term relationship. What are the generational impacts as well? And so I think when even people are wanting to provide a number of corporate social responsibility, like training, being able to have these different aspects, but what are the actual needs of the First Nation? Each one is different too. You might be able to sort of blanket an umbrella some of the needs that you might perceive to be there. But there are a number of First Nations as well, and through our experience that we found out that one particular individual might have so much training to the point of ridiculous, but there's no job. Or there might be a job there, but it's not the one they want to do, because each of the industries are coming in saying, okay, we're going to hire X amount of people, on and on and on, but is that the industry that they actually want to be a part of? So I think it's also fantastic when other people within industry are able to state, okay, well, you know, we're doing a pipeline here, but you know what we're going to train? We'll train doctors, we're going to train MBAs, we're going to train engineers, and it's not going to have a direct benefit so much for whatever said company, but it is nation building and assisting to build the capacity of that nation. So I think it's around what can you bring to the table as well, what your expectations, being clear about what those are, And, what is it that's gonna be offered to the nation? And also too, I think that times are certainly changing where instead of whatever nation is gonna be totally okay, like I can think of a few right now, and I was just in Alberta, and they're stating, instead of us waiting for these long processes to be gone through between the provincial governments, the federal governments, guess what? We're going to court.
Just a thought, we're talking about speaking to nations. There's many cases where nations aren't speaking with the same voice. There's camps within a nation that will be adamantly opposed, and then there may be groups or individuals that would like to develop that, but there's a conflict within a nation. How do you identify those people who may be willing to come to the table while still maintaining the protocols as far as communication and talking to the right people?
Yep,
It can be a real challenge.
that's right. And so those are other areas where we're brought in as well. And to be able to take a look at different, of course, each nation will have different interests. Within that nation, there may be different groups that have interests. There might be some that are completely, totally opposed to whatever the project is that is being put forward. I think the number one thing is around communication. And so you're needing to be able to get that information to that group that wants to, oppose what's going on. A lot of times I think it's a lack of understanding. It's a lack of that communication of really knowing what's happening within the nation. So we're also brought in not only through to be able to give communication to chief and council, but around community engagement as well, to be able to have that information sent out to the community. And I know when they've got it, and when whatever people within that membership have it, is when they're starting to talk about it, when they can ask questions, and when they're